Hey guys, it's James back for another daily devotional this morning or evening or afternoon or whenever you are watching this. We are going through Proverbs 29. So we've been going through the Proverbs and today we are looking at Proverbs 29. It's all going to be focusing on one big thing, and I want you guys to kind of have that in your minds as we go through this. So just like a few days ago when we did Proverbs 18. So for this one, the main idea, kind of if you were to look at the cover of the book for what this chapter is all about, the main idea is correction and self-control. Correction and self-control. So by correction, I mean when your parents, your teacher, when someone in authority over you, or even a friend, when anyone kind of points out something that isn't right, that is wrong. And by isn't right, I don't just mean like, hey, you got that question on the test wrong. Like, hey, 3 squared is not 6, it's 9. You know, like it's not just like a math wrong, like something that's morally wrong, like bad. Like if someone's trying to point out, hey, it kind of looks like you're looking over at my answers, kind of thing. Right, so that type of thing. So correction is pointing out something that is wrong and trying to correct it to something that is right, right? And then the second point is self-control, right? When you want to look over at the answers because it's a really difficult test, but you use self-control to instead just take the test and try your best, and it's probably going to be rough, but you wouldn't have looked at those answers and done something wrong. Right? And so this proverb is all about the correction and self-control and what happens if you do those things and what happens if you don't. So first off, in verse 1, we're just going to kind of pull out a few verses again to pull this out. In verse 1 it says, "He who is often reproved or corrected, he who is often corrected, yet stiffens his neck, will suddenly be broken beyond healing." Right? Stiffen your neck is like, no, I'm not going to do it, right? Like, it's like if you're trying to get into a wrestling match with someone, they're trying to pull you down, you're like kind of pulling back, right? So stiffening your neck is like, no, I don't want to follow this. I'm not going to be corrected, right? That's you defiantly saying, I know what you're trying to tell me, and I'm saying no. I don't want to follow that correction. It says, will suddenly be broken beyond healing. And really what this proverb is drawing out is that in your early years, especially as a junior higher and a high schooler, you're going to be corrected a lot. It's going to happen so much. If I had $1 for every time my parents had corrected me, I have so many dollars I wouldn't be able to count them. Like I was not the greatest kid, but they corrected me a lot. And the purpose for that was so that one, I would honor Christ, but then also when I grew older, I'd be able to use that self-control to know what's right and what's wrong based off of their corrections, right? So your self-control is based off of you knowing what is right and wrong, and that's helped by people correcting you, right? So people correct you, that informs you of, okay, yes, they said that was wrong, and then later on, you use your self-control to follow that correction you got in the past and stay on what is right. And so this proverb's all about kind of showing, hey, there's all of these corrections that happen in your youth, and then they really, really matter because, like, look down at verse 5 through 8 is all about kind of this is what happens without self-control, and this is what happens with self-control, right? A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet, right? If you're just trying to tell people things to just to get stuff for yourself, right? You're telling your neighbor, hey, you're the greatest person ever. I love you so much, just because you want to throw a party. That's not good. It says you're laying a net for your feet. You're setting yourself a trap, right? If you're trying to flatter people. Or an evil man is captured in his sin, but a righteous man sings and rejoices, right? That self-control would spare you from being caught in your sin. A righteous man knows the rights of the poor. A wicked man does not understand such knowledge. Right? When you're younger, you might be tempted to kind of take advantage of people, but really you need self-control to know that's wrong, right? You want to honor and respect everyone. And then even later on, when you see in verse 11, a fool gives vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. And this can be so difficult, right? Especially when you have a sibling really getting on your nerves, when you have things feel so unfair sometimes. You're like, okay, you gave this person this punishment, but you're giving this, like me, this punishment. Those aren't the same, right? Or I have these chores, they have those chores, right? And things seem unfair. It says a fool gives vent to those, right? Fool just opens up the can of worms and just vents. This is unfair, I don't like this is mean, or whatever, and just starts venting. It says a wise man quietly holds it back, right? So there's this kind of distinction between self-control and no self-control, and really totally different lifestyles. And then we get to verse 15 through 17, and this is probably a verse that your parents love and you don't. So verses 15 through 17 says, the rod and reproof give wisdom. The rod is spanking, ow, and reproof is correction. Reproof is another word for correction. But a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. And then if you look even down at verse 17, discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart. Right? And that's saying if you discipline your kids early in life, they will be more self-controlled and more respectful later in life. Because if you don't discipline them, right? You guys have seen the movies, or maybe you know a kid at school who just doesn't have really parents who are at all involved, and they are just total terrors and nightmares, and like, you don't want to be that kid. And this is saying like they get worse later in life, but by disciplining, that reins it in. It's valuable. And even in verse 19, he says, by mere words a servant is not disciplined, for though he understands, he will not respond. Right? So words aren't enough. Sometimes you need physical consequences, which can hurt, but that is necessary for us to become more like Christ, for us to be more controlled. We need those physical consequences, even though they can be uncomfortable and they can be painful at times. By also affirming discipline is needed in order for us to be self-controlled. And then lastly, verse 27, the last paragraph of the proverb, concludes with, an unjust man is an abomination to the righteous, but one whose way is straight is an abomination to the wicked. Saying that the good is not good for the evil person, right? And if you are self-controlled and if you have been corrected, then you're going to stand out a lot from those who aren't. Whereas the person who has no self-control, the person who hates correction, who hates authority, right, and is a terror, he is going to be really difficult and really stand out from those who are self-controlled. So that's the point of this proverb. So self-control and correction, self-control and correction, and those two are linked. So this week, I want you to be thinking about, when you are corrected, how do you respond? Do you stiffen your neck, right? Do you kind of brace against it? Do you want to vent, right? Or do you humbly take it? Do you respond well to it? Are you willing to hear what is said and willing to hear how you should change? So that's it, and I will see you guys again in a few days. Bye.